Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Skill Up here with another podcast featuring quite a few people from across the YouTube scene that and the sort of Twitch stream that play the Division way too much because we love it. So I'm going to introduce our guests today. There's a huge amount to talk about. So I'm going to kick off first of all by introducing Arekkz.
What's up, guys? How you doing? Thank you.
Very well,
I'm
man.
back. It's back. Good to be back again, man. So what is the third one, right?
Absolute third time round, man. That's it. That's it. Returning as well, we also have BreezyPeazy.
How's it going?
How's it going? Breezy again having his 7 a.m. start. So Breezy, we're very appreciative for you making the time, man. Thank you very much. We've got MarcoStyle. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast again.
Oh, always, of course. Absolute pleasure. And we have a new member of the cast. We have the great LikeButter, the demon of the DZ himself. He's joining us for the first time. Butter,
I like that.
Thanks for having us here, man. The demon of the DZ. You should put that in your stream somewhere. Like that just works. But
yeah.
Anyway,
Thanks,
and for
Thanks
those
for
of you
me,
that
seriously.
Absolute pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining. So yeah, and obviously you guys would all know me if you're watching on my channel. I'm Skill Up, and I'll kind of be like hosting the discussion, asking more questions, and I'll be contributing. So other guys here, if I'm talking too much, please tell me to shut up. And I'm also going to be a bit of a time Nazi on this one because we've got a lot to get through and not a lot of time to talk about it. So I apologize in advance, boys, if I have to cut you off a little bit early to move things along. We want to make sure we cover all the good stuff. So 1.3 has launched. A lot of hype, and when I say 1.3, that's 1.3. Underground has only come out for PC and Xbox thus far. Our PS4 brethren are still waiting on that, and they'll get that on August 2nd. But I'd be really keen to hear from everyone in terms of how they're feeling about the expansion thus far. Very sort of headline points, because obviously we're going to dig into that detail later on. So alphabetically, Arekkz, what do you think, man? Patch 1.3 Underground.
So super headline points. I mean, I'm generally happy with the overall patch. I think it's got some like really good new additions. Definitely answered one of the big questions which a lot of people had, which solo players struggled beforehand to try and gear up, especially if they only had like incursions or dark zone. Now having the underground is like a really good way to gear up. So I feel like there's a lot more stuff for people to do, a lot more paths to end game gear, which is good. I personally like quite a few of the new gear sets, so I think there's like some it might not necessarily be to everyone's standard, the same tier as Striker Sentry, but I am, generally speaking, I'm happy with the new additions. So I think as it goes, especially when you compare it to previous updates, especially considering this is the first season pass one, the first paid one, I definitely happy with it. I think there's still some more stuff, more improvements to be made and stuff. Future updates need to include more stuff, I would say, but I think they're going in the right direction. So generally speaking, top level, I'm happy.
Okay, cool. BreezyPeazy, what are your thoughts, my man?
I love the underground. I hate that it went by too quickly, right? I felt like, because, I was one of the very few people that really tried to hit max level as quick as possible. And then, there was nothing left. And I feel the PvP is absolute terrible because of Reclaimer. But, again, also, I think they were headed in the right direction, too. They had some cool sets. Weren't very practical, but got a little more creative. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, so a bit of a mixed view there. Fair enough. Thanks for that. LikeButter, our new member of the cast. What are your thoughts, man?
I have to say that I was pretty happy with how much content they've added outside of the Dark Zone. Like, I think for a long time, the Dark Zone was kind of that go-to spot for endgame. And to be able to give to the players who don't necessarily want to go into the Dark Zone and kind of get pushed into PvPing, I think that the Underground is a really good start. I kind of wish that there was a little bit more there when it comes to content. Like, the first mission that was phenomenal, the Underground like club mission, but all the other ones kind of seem like variations of themselves. And I would have kind of liked them to have different missions kind of, but overall I think it's a really good start, and it feels good to actually enjoy the PvE outside of the Dark Zone, which is something that I don't do too often, and I do enjoy the Underground, and I think it's good. As far as the gear sets, I feel like when Massive kind of puts gear sets together, I think they kind of think of PvE first and then kind of just throw it in there and hope that it works for PvP. I really wish that there were more gear sets that were put towards PvP or useful in PvP scenarios. But you know, the new Fire Crest, the reload speed's definitely cool. The Reclaimer, I think once it gets fixed, won't be super terrible. Right now it's kind of spammy in the Dark Zone. You'll see it and you can notice it, but I think overall the expansion and the DLC was really, really good, and I think that the game is going in the right direction for sure.
Cool. Thank you. MarcoStyle, a resident
I feel
man.
like I'm the only one with
Here
this
we
opinion.
go. I knew this was coming. I was like, Marco just silently waiting. He's like, I'm going to let you all speak. And then here it is, you know? What do you got first, Marco?
I am not too happy with the new expansion. I think the only thing that was really good was Dragon's Nest Incursion. Simply because of the fact that there are actually some mechanics that are hard to deal with, and you need to have the correct gear, correct team. You need to know what you're doing to be able to complete that. For example, with the 4 horsemen, you need to take them out all at the same time. That's not something that you know on your first or your second try, and that keeps it interesting. However, here it is. The Underground, I don't really like it too much. To me, it feels like you're doing side missions over and over and over again. The environments are nice. I'm gonna give them that. You know, it looks good. But I feel like helping this JTF soldier or destroying that specific object is not something that is on par with the main missions. And for something that you pay for, I would have expected something with a little more backbone than just basically doing side missions on steroids, if you get what I'm saying. On top of that, the variety on the higher level underground missions is also not that great. Most of the time you're fighting the LMB because those are, I guess, the beefiest and hardest to take down, or, you know, the most difficult enemies. So they put that pretty much 99% of the time when you're fighting, when you're doing heroic mode for that sense. And they've also added in mechanics such as disorient bullets, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's a thing now, where the LMB shoots you in or disrupt it. Disrupt it. And I feel like that's just another one of those things where they add crowd control on top of the damage instead of having the choice between them. There's no strategy to it. You just randomly get disrupted or disoriented or whatever it's called. And just like the fire bullets, having CC crowd control on top of the damage, I think is never a good game mechanic. I think players should always be able to choose and build according to that. And that goes for the enemies as well. If there were special enemies like the shock drones that don't do a lot of damage necessarily, but have the ability to CC you, that's good. But this is just another thing on top of the damage, which I didn't really like. So mechanics, not too happy with either. It's just side missions on steroids. I'm not going to talk much about the Dark Zone because I feel like I've already talked way too long, more than you guys. So Dark Zone, pretty bad state right now.
We'll definitely come back. We'll definitely be able to come back to that, Mark.
Yeah. Okay, so continue on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that. No, I mean, just personally from my perspective, I think I'm actually really on the same page as Marco with this one as well. To be honest with you, I'm actually disappointed with this expansion. The last podcast that we said, the number one thing that I was interested in for this expansion was balance. Like, I didn't want anything new in the division. I was actually fine with the content that was already there. The only thing I really cared about was to make everything that's in there currently work and to balance the game in terms of abilities and gear sets and weapons and PvP and all these things. And I think across the board, that has not occurred. There are still outliers everywhere when it comes to the balance of the game, and I think PvP has absolutely no balance whatsoever, and it's still, in my opinion, not in great shape. So for me, it's not great. I mean, I enjoy the Underground, and I enjoy Dragon's Nest Incursion, but those other things to me are just so important that I really am not happy with how this expansion has landed. So that's my view, but I'm really interested to dig down into some of the detail in this, because obviously we've been talking about the Underground a lot already, but I want to just go that level beneath. So Breezy, you're already ranked 40, right? Are you feeling like there's nothing more the Underground has to offer you? You can't see yourself just kicking back, grinding away in there, like the Underground, you're done? Like, what's the deal with the Underground for you?
It feels as though really the only rewards I was getting were out of the Underground boxes. I mean, sure, like, I could go back there and I could grind out some heroic, get some 268s, but at the end of the day, all I'm getting are Firecrest and Blind. And sure, maybe the Firecrest 3-piece, I do see some usefulness in that, but I've been kind of staying away from the Dark Zone for the majority of of this current expansion for a big reason. Because of that reason, it's sort of like because I do it so little, when I do get in there, I do have some fun. But I feel it's just one of those things I can't keep going in there because I'm just going to hate my life because of all the incendiaries. And it's just, oh my God, it's so frustrating. But yeah, the underground right now, it just feels like, I mean, I hit level 40 in like 3 days, and then like, what's the point in doing it again? You know, I'm not going to get any more boxes because I can't level. I could power level alts. I was actually planning on doing that, right? Having like swap to a different leader who's already level 40 and run us through the highest difficulty. But yeah, like on the main, I mean, it's just, and to be like, it was cool, right? It was sort of like the Diablo Grand Rifts, but also it didn't have a lot of the cool things that they had, like special enemies, and again, everything's just bullet sponges rather than having like millions of mobs that you just plow through and then like maybe a special pack, you know? It's just
sure.
Yeah.
So open question, does anyone here see themselves playing the underground consistently for like the next, let's say, I don't know when the next expansion is out, but like, let's say it's another 2 months away, right? Does anyone see themselves just grinding away on the underground, being happy with that?
Let me answer that with the fact that my underground rank on my main account is rank 13 now. So that's a definite no for me right there. No,
You've got so much to do though, Marco. You know, there's so much opportunity for you. So many caches you can still collect. You know,
so many G36 which got nerfed. Yeah. No, it's
so many blind sets. So
many. It took me 14 caches to get a G36. I'll have you know, everyone was like, "Yo, G36 is dropping out these boxes." I got every single drop was a blind gear set piece until I finally got a G36 about a week ago. So but I mean, no, but to your point of that, I mean, the underground for me, I literally only played it, you know, I did a video on this on day one, like, I literally only played it to get caches. That was like, if you want to level up and you're a solo, even if you're a solo player, you know, this is it was a quick, easy way, maybe not the best gear set pieces, but for people that were behind the gear, you know, gear score cap and that were like a little bit low on gear, you could still grind and get free 268 pieces, free 229 weapons, throw it on, at least have a relatively decent set. It might not necessarily have the best set bonuses, but it was a good way to gear up. But beyond that point, if you really want to start fine-tuning your build and playing with, like, you know, the top 1% or the top 2% or whatever, you need to go outside the underground, because while, yes, you can, if you're very lucky, get the occasional non-blind, non-firecrest piece in the underground, it's so rare. Like, I've probably seen like 1 or 2 of them in my party.
That's
another... So generally speaking,
that's another thing that I also feel like that the rewards are just so bad. I've actually almost gone mental, I think, because I've played Falcon Lost Heroic mode like 80, 90 times since the 1.3 patch came out, and I just now finished the build that I wanted. And that's It's just crazy that it just requires that much Falcon Lost, that much of the same activity to just get a build. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, like, because the thing is, I find it a bit weird, like, because I can appreciate why, you know, there should be certain gear sources from certain activities. You know, I've played Warcraft, I've played Monster Hunter. I'm no like stranger to like play this activity to get this kind of group of gear. But at the same time, for people that, you know, like, especially for solo players, you know, if you're generally trying to use the underground to gear up, knowing that you'll basically be forced to use blind gear, or when they introduce HVTs, I mean, that was a great new mechanic.
Yeah.
But it means, you can only use this to get Lone Star. I feel like
that's bad. Yeah.
There should be yeah, I mean, I'm happy for there to be a predominant set. Like, this is generally speaking where you go to get this gear set, but don't make it so weighted so that it's like you will only ever get like Lone Star if you do HVTs. You'll only ever get blind if you do
What do you think about the possibility of letting players, you know, tick a couple boxes? Let's say you have the option to select Sentry, Striker, Tactician, then you start the mission, and then for every activity you can either get one of those. Still the same chance of getting a good item or not, still the same chance.
I mean, either that, or you know what else would be good? I mean, given that, like, you know, HVTs, for example, you're fighting particular people. You know, if I apply like a Monster Hunter logic, if you want an armor set from like a Rathalos, you farm a Rathalos. Like, if you want to get like a gear set, say for example, there's like let's say for example there's a Firecrest named NPC that appears in the HVT list. You know that if you kill him, he is a source of Firecrest stuff, and it would rotate on a weekly basis. At least you would know. You could be like, oh, this week this guy's here. Let me grab that. That would be a cool idea.
I did forget to mention this is actually a joint Monster Hunter and Division podcast. You've merged the two of them. So sorry for not mentioning that at the start of this, guys.
Whoopsie.
But Drew, LikeButter, I'm here. I'm keen to hear from you on this, man. What are your thoughts in terms of how long you see yourself playing in the underground and, you know, the rewards on it?
Yeah, I think the underground was a good way to kind of get gear outside the dark zone. But yeah, I don't really think that I could see myself grinding it after hitting max level and getting everything that you need. You know, I have a G36 with Brutal Deadly and Focus, I think it's called. So I don't really need anything from the new caches besides, like, I think Firecrest gloves. So yeah, I don't see myself doing the underground too much. I think the underground for me is more of just a break from the dark zone, because I PvP and we group up and we play in the dark zone a lot. And I think the underground is just one of those things that we kind of do outside of the dark zone to kind of just chill and relax. And I don't know. I don't see myself continuously grinding it after all of the rewards that are given there. Yeah, I think you guys are right about the only select amount of things that you can get from the underground. You can't really, especially because the underground caches, I feel like I only get like the new gear, like it'll be a G36 or a P19 PP19, or it's very specific. I personally think that you should be able to get sentries, you should be able to get strikers, you should be able to get anything anywhere. Now I do think that certain areas should have a higher chance, but it doesn't feel like a higher chance. It feels like definitely you're going to get Lone Star from, you know, the HVTs.
But I feel like there should still be a definitive way to get certain gear items in every activity, because if you basically can get every item in every activity, then the chance of you actually getting the item that you want is even smaller. There would be no way to go for a specific build, and the RNG would be even more cruel. So that's why I suggested just let every activity, or almost every activity, choose which gear item you would want to receive. You would still get, you know, bad rolls. You would still get not a backpack, but a mask. So you would still not get guaranteed rewards. It would still be RNG, but at least you could build your character towards a specific thing, rather than, you know, having random or items that you do not want.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, look, the whole issue is very much exacerbated by the fact that most content isn't particularly enjoyable to run these days. Like, if Falcon Lost was super fun, like back in the days when I used to play like WoW or whatever, or even Destiny, like it's just fine to go and grind a strike or a dungeon, whatever. You just smash it out. You know, it's enjoyable just to sort of chat with your mates, and maybe you get something good at the end, maybe you don't, whatever. But it's fun to just kind of move through that. Whereas I think Falcon Lost is so crushingly not fun, and Clear Sky is so difficult. Yeah, and Clear Sky is so difficult for most players, and like that sort of content that we're talking about is just so uninviting that it kind of makes you think, well, we should be able to choose what gear we want from these one or two activities because they're the only ones that we want to do. So I think the solutions to this are many. It's like, yeah, you can give people players more options. You can buff other gear sets as well so that you're actually more satisfied with the gear that you're getting, rather than thinking, oh shit, it's a blind set, DE or whatever, or vendor, I guess I should say. And then obviously there's that, you know, that other option of just like, you know, having lots of different opportunities in terms of enjoyable content for you to do. So you're like, oh, well, I don't mind what I'm going to do because it's...
I think that's a little bit unfair to say, because what activity doesn't get boring or stale after the 50th time? I think you could play any game, anything really, and after 50 times in a row, you're pretty much, I think I don't want to play this anymore for now, and you just want to do something else in that game. Is that?
Yes and no. I mean, again, coming back to a Destiny example, anyone that's still playing Destiny after this long, and there are actually still quite a few people, they don't mind just smashing out a strike, or they do their weekly, you know, heroics, whatever. I'm not going to get into the details of Destiny now, but what I'm saying is that, you know, different players enjoy different things with regards to the difficulty of content. If it's appropriately tuned and the content's enjoyable, people don't mind just having a bit of fun and smashing it out with their mates, and as I said, having a crack at something good. But when it's like really punishingly difficult content and it's not fun, then even if the rewards are worthwhile, like they are in Falcon Lost, and that Falcon Lost is the place to go right now if you want to progress your character. Most people are still not willing to saddle up for that because the price of doing business in Falcon Lost is just too high from like a pain perspective, you know?
The other important thing about that is like kind of about the repeatable things, and the reason it doesn't apply to Falcon Lost and Clear Sky, but does to a certain extent Dragon's Nest, is because normally when you repeat those activities time and time again, because you are getting more efficient at doing it yourself, you can, to a certain extent, do it quicker. You know, like I used to get to a point where, I'll very briefly mention it, but like in Destiny, I was farming a particular item, and it got to the point where I could complete that strike in about 2 minutes because I had like a really clean run. The problem with Falcon Lost and Clear Sky, because they're so heavily gear dependent, it doesn't matter how good you are and how, like, you know, it will still it's really hard to shave off too much time off of that thing. Whereas like, you know, Destiny with a raid, you know, the very first time you go for the world first run raid, it might take you 10 hours to do it. But now, you know, we can smash through a raid in 45 minutes because we've got all the what do we call it, tactics down. And that's where farming really comes into it. You know, once you get so good, you should be able to blitz through it. And if the activity every single time still takes ages because it's not about strategy, it's actually just about these guys are stupidly strong and they're still going to take us half an hour to shoot, then that's where the problem lies.
Very good point.
So moving on from this discussion, because we've all got some opinions on the underground, and I think it's obviously a good start, you know, but there's a lot more opportunity to develop on that. Something else that's sort of a good start with huge opportunities to develop, I hope you like that segue, was is gear sets. I'm just going to put it out there, like, what is the deal with gear set design at Massive? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because you know, I've obviously been very vocal about this lately, and a lot of people don't like my views, so I'm very keen to hear from other people on what their views are. So Breezy, what do you think? I'm not going to ask you like, what do you think of the new gear sets, because obviously a lot of them are not great, right? But I'm more interested to hear, like, what do you think Massive is thinking when they're designing their gear sets? What do you think is their intent? Like, I'm honestly interested to hear the perspectives on this, because everyone has so many different views. So yeah, Breezy, what do you think Massive are trying to achieve with the new gear sets?
I think they're definitely trying to keep us from being overpowered. I think they're afraid to make us strong. And I think they are trying to branch out and be creative, right? That's evidenced by the new gear sets. Like, all right, so during Clear Sky, we got things like Hunter's Faith, which were just absolutely terrible, but they were finally kind of being a little creative. Now we're seeing at least a little more practicality. When you destroy something gets blinded. When you destroy something, you can continue incendiary. It's a little more practical, but still not very usable. But again, we're just getting weaker and weaker and weaker. You know, I pine for like the day that they're going to be like Diablo 2, where like I just have a full list of combat stats, right? Nomad wouldn't be that terrible if it at least had some serious combat stats. You'd be like, all right, well, this isn't Sentry's Call, but you know, at least I'm going to be doing some more damage now. I don't know what they're doing.
Wait, are you saying that you don't like Nomad?
Oh. You heard it here first, someone does not like Nomad. It's an exclusive here on this podcast discussion. Someone does not like Nomad. LikeButter, I know you do a lot of build videos as well, and I know you've tested quite a few of the new sets. What do you think about the new sets, and what do you think Massive is trying to go for, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Breezy came up with a really good point. I think they are kind of scared to put something out that's going to make people strong. And that's why I feel like a lot of the gear sets that they're putting out, they're trying to kind of put that towards situational uses and more teamwork rather than making an individual strong. And I think a lot of solo players are really, really like feeling this kind of way that they're going about it, because it's hard to kind of just build something for yourself. Like you said, you have sentries, you have strikers, you have all these other gear sets that are old that are still usable because of the way that they're built and the things that they gave those gear sets. And now it seems like they're kind of gearing you towards building a team comp. But what about the people out there that don't play with people every single day? You know, like yeah, I guess they could matchmake and find players, but you know, there's so many, you know, outside things that you have to look at in order for you to realize, you know, what is it going to take for us to get gear sets that are actually going to make ourselves stronger? With the NPCs getting tankier and tankier and tankier, I kind of wish that they did a complete overhaul to the NPCs and made it so that they, instead of them just being tankier and stronger, that they were smarter and moved more aggressively and worked as, you know, like a squad really would if you were moving in on agents. And I think the problem with that is another thing why people just hate nerfs, right? No one likes to see their gun get nerfed when it's the only thing that's putting down these really overly tanky, even sometimes stupid AI. You know, sometimes you'll have an LMG guy just sitting there doing nothing, and you're sitting there pummeling him for like 30-40 seconds. And the problem is, it's not like Diablo or any of these other games where when you grind out your gear and you get really strong sets and you get good rolls, you never really feel strong. Like, you never really feel like you hit that perfect gear set with all of the stats that you wanted and everything, where you're just shredding through enemies and you're just blowing through everything in your path. You never really feel like that. You feel weak no matter what you build. And I really think that kind of boils down to the NPCs needing a complete overhaul. I mean, right now it's almost impossible to have a decent firefight near any of the landmarks in the Dark Zone because the NPCs are so strong.
Yep.
Like, it's almost like it's not the team that's better, it's the team that gets, flanked first by the NPCs. So yeah, I think that when you have that perfect gear set, you should be able to shred through the NPCs. That's the point of building and feeling strong and feeling good about that. And I think the true end game should be, players either PvPing or going through and finishing landmarks. But I feel like the landmarks are it's more of like a nuisance than anything now.
It's now
I'm
it's a place
gonna
to avoid.
Set something up here, and I'm gonna throw it to Arekkz, right? So I think one of the successful sets that we've seen this expansion has been Alpha Bridge, right?
Yes.
It works, okay? But let's be clear, it works because it gives you stats, okay? And we know that sentries and strikers and tacticians, they all work because they give you stats. And so far, every other set that's come into the game, except maybe Reclaimer, they have not worked because they have not really been trying to give you stats. They've been trying to give you other things. So my question is this a design decision that Blizzard needs to... Blizzard, bloody hell.
Blizzard, please.
That massive... Blizzard, please. That massive need to finalize. Like, is it a binary choice between stats versus utility? Or is there like a happy medium that they need to arrive at the sort of perfect set design? Like, what are your thoughts on that tension?
So you know what this like all comes from, right? They shot themselves in the foot back the very first time they introduced gear sets. Because think back to, back in my day, think back to like before the updates, right? Before gear sets were a thing. You built around your attributes, right? You were like, I want to be tanky, I'll build for stamina. I want to be DPS, I'll build for firearms, and I want to be skill power, I'll build for electronics, right? You built around that, and then of course you use your bonuses to enhance your skills. The second they introduced gear sets, right, it's an interesting thing because of course you sometimes sacrifice bonuses for the wider talents, but had the very first gear sets they introduced not given you a flat damage boost, and they were just like abilities like, burning bullets or like, blinding enemies, something like that, we probably never would have gone down this road, because the problem is those first the first three gear sets they introduced were so good that every single time from then on, it's now always been a case of, is this new gear set better than Striker Sentry? It shouldn't be that. It should be, what does this new gear set do? Let me try it out. But no one's like, every single time a new update comes out, they're like, why am I even going to bother? Because Striker Sentry is so strong. So the whole problem derives from that. I don't really feel like, to be honest, I don't really feel like the damage for it should come from a gear set bonus. I feel like your damage, I feel like gear set bonuses personally should be additional things that maybe you can't do using skills. They should give you like abilities outside of what you have, so that way you spec for the gear set to give you something that you don't necessarily have access to, and your damage still comes from the same attributes you've always had, because that means everyone's always on an even footing, right? Someone could run Striker and still have the same damage as someone running Blind, but it means that obviously ignoring the perks for now, but you would then say that the Striker person would have an ability that the Blind person wouldn't, and then they would, you then have this whole rock, paper, scissors thing. So the problem with that, the only real solution to that will eventually come, and I know people aren't going to like this, but it happens in every single game like this I've ever played, World of Warcraft, Destiny, anything. The only way you'll ever fix this is when they increase your base level and they say you have to hit level 40, 50, 60 now. They increase the power cap and they leave the gear behind. When that day comes, whether it's Division 2, whether it's survival, whether it's the final upgrade, maybe they won't do it, maybe they're too scared to do it, I don't know. But if that day comes where they're like, right, everything you have earned up until now is now going to be superseded by this blue level 40 gun you found. The day that happens is the day that the division is reset and that everyone is on the even playing field again, because until then, people are never going to let go. I mean, like Marco said, he's gone back to farming Falcon Lost because he knows in order to be the most efficient, he's still after that same gear, right? And everyone's like, if you still want to do maximum damage, you're still pretty much, okay, admittedly, Striker and Sentry have been nerfed slightly, but you're still pretty much after relatively similar builds. So, really, that's where it comes from. But, I mean, yeah, I still think, I like a couple of the new gear sets, like Alpha Bridge. I'm running with it now. Like, I don't care that maybe my damage isn't necessarily as high as, some of the slightly more efficient sets out there. I have had so much fun with this set. It's been a long time since I've actually been like, you know what, yeah, this is super cool. I'm running G36, Caduceus. I've got 6 talents on my G36. Like, the fact that I've got Brutal, Deadly, and I've got cool headed, so I'm going for headshots, I'm doing more damage, and my sticky bomb flashbang is coming back in like a second. So I'm like, flash headshot. It's just so much fun, and it's like ultimate CC. And yeah, I'm like, there's potential there, and I think they're probably trying to get themselves out of that hole now. They're just like, we've dug a hole, we want to try and make cool things, but the problem is, most people, unless they're like us, where we're making videos, we're testing things out anyway. Most people are like, I don't really want to go for cool. I want to go for damage. Like, if I have a cool fun set, but I can't shoot the enemies, what's the point?
Absolutely, yeah. So I know,
yeah.
Marco, you've given lots of thought over the months and whatever to like gear design in the division. Like, what are your thoughts on what do Massive need to do here to fix this problem around these gear sets?
I think the problem with the new gear sets, to me, is very obvious. LikeButter already mentioned that they're too situational, right? And I think that for a lot of the players, situational cannot ever be good enough. Let me explain a bit, because you're always, you're grinding for those gear set items, right? And you want to make your character more powerful. But there's a lot of players that don't always play with a fixate group. So there's a lot of players that need to be kind of this guy that can do sort of all the things, right? So in a game with a lot of RNG to it, like you could get a lot of bad rolls, a lot of good rolls, and it takes a lot of time to actually get good rolls for the build that you want to go for. So it makes a whole lot more sense to go for a build that can kind of do everything, such as sentries, which is, a lot more damage overall, striker, a lot more damage overall, tacticians, a lot more, skill power overall. It makes a lot more sense to spec out a build with those kind of gear sets that are not so situational, so you can do all those things, rather than building for a character that is very situational and then get good rolls as well. Because you're all saying that, yes, if you have all these abilities, you can completely build towards that, and you can have different type of gear sets for different situations, make them more situational. But I think the thing is that a lot of people are simply not going to have enough time to get all of the good rolls on those gear sets to be able to make a decent character out of all those situational builds. So what a lot of people will do anyway is they will go for the builds that will give them overall the most value, thus the older gear sets, Sentry, Striker, and Tactician. And I think that's why the other gear sets are lacking so much, because I do feel like that some of the newer gear sets introduced in 1.2 and 1.3 can be good, better than Tacticians, better than Sentry in some situations. But I think having different builds for all those different situations is something that the vast majority of the player base just cannot achieve, simply because it's so hard to get good rolled items. And I think that is one of the underlying problems why these gear sets are not used or not wanted, because they only serve one or two purposes. And why would you ever spend so much time investing in creating a build that only serves one or two purposes? I think
For sure.
that's a really big problem with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, sort of segueing sort of from that, like, obviously this patch has had plenty of nerfs in it, right? We started with the Vector of the Org, the M1A, Sentry, and Striker. We've now had the G36, which has been fixed, but also at the same time, I think it found its place in the current meta, and people are very much like, no, thank you very much, that's a nerf. I'm wondering, like, I think we need to talk about this. Like, I think it'd be silly if we didn't bring this up, because, obviously the community's really pissed about it, and I've obviously gone on the record in a big way talking about my view on how important balance is and how nerfs are an important part of that. So I'm just going to sort of bow out of this conversation, but I'm really interested to hear from you guys in terms of how have Massive managed the whole nerf journey this patch, and why do you think the community is feeling the way that they are, and what does Massive need to do about it? So Arekkz, did you want to maybe kick us off on that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I definitely want to talk about this, because I know that, like, I saw your video. I definitely agree with a lot of your points, and I've also know that you've been getting a lot of shit for it, right? But I think I want to kind of take a look at the bigger picture for a second, because I feel like this division is one of these, what I've been calling recently, MMO light. It's like a new experience for a lot of people. If people have come over from like FPS and they never played a game like this before, they're quite new to this culture of buff, nerf, constant changes and things like that. And as someone that not only has worked in the games industry before, but has also played a lot of games like this before, nerfing is definitely an important part of the game. And while people don't like to hear it, people don't like to see it, I love my G36, and yes, I'm working on a video at the moment. I've been testing mine, and I'm like, yes, it definitely doesn't hit as hard as it used to. And sure, it was a cool gun, but people need to appreciate there is a much wider picture. And while, yes, we admittedly play the game a lot more than the people at Massive, because of course they're busy working on the game, they do also, as much as you might not like to believe it, they do know what they're talking about. And you can't just... The problem they also did, they said once in passing, and it's important to kind of remember this, they said once, we will try, where possible, to buff before nerf. They never said we will never nerf. And this is the important thing. You cannot buff everything constantly to fix everything. Because you get to this point where you're like, all right, the G36 is strong, let's buff every other weapon. Then they're like, all right, every weapon is strong, now the enemies are too weak, let's buff the enemies. And suddenly you return to the position where you're at. Like, you have to have this appropriate balance curve. So I think nerfs are super important. I feel like they're not necessarily addressing them in the right way, because it's weird. They started out at the beginning of Division's launch, very, very vocal, very we're super transparent. They told us about pretty much everything, right? And then there've been a lot more kind of cloak and dagger stealth nerfs recently, or things they haven't necessarily said about, and credit to the guys, they do communicate a lot better than, say, some other studios, but at the same time, they have also, maybe it's because they've been getting a lot of shit recently, they're just some things we just don't really feel like we can tell people about, but it's it just needs to, I feel... I honestly don't know what the perfect answer is for the way to deal with this, but I think it's just important that people realise that as much as you like your weapon, as much as you like what you have, it's not always as simple as just buff everything else because everything else isn't as strong. Game design doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Yeah. So Breezy, how about you, man? What are your thoughts on, are Massive doing the right things at the moment when it comes to their buffing and their nerfing, and what do they need to be doing to make sure that they're meeting the community's expectations while also balancing the game appropriately? Hello?
Sorry. The
that's all right.
PC actually went on sleep mode, right as you were saying that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, oh no, that's bad. I'm pretty much completely in agreement with Arekkz. I mean, yeah, it's great when they give you a weapon that's really strong and you're like, oh, this is super cool. I'm doing damage numbers I wasn't able to do before. It's like before we had sentries, basically, and then they gave us sentries. We're like, oh my gosh, 400k crits with my SMG. What is this? But it's just not supposed to be like that, right? There was something wrong with it. And they told us from the very beginning, the G36 is going to be changed, right? Expect it. And even now, after the nerf, it's still ridiculously strong. It's just actually a little more balanced. And not even for PvE. It's still crazy strong for PvE, right? But it's just, I don't know. I mean, yeah, pretty much what you guys are saying. It has to happen.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, so and Drew, because you've obviously put out your voice about this as well. What are your thoughts for anyone that hasn't heard them on how Massive is approaching this balance challenge at the moment?
I think that the G36 definitely needed a nerf if you just look at the numbers, and I think a huge problem that has kind of come up and why people are so upset about it is not so much that because they feel like the G36 was balanced, they feel like the G36 was the only way to burn through all these overly tanky,
very true,
overly spongy enemies.
Very true.
And I think that's where the kind of the problem comes from. And I think that they went about it well, I guess. But I think a lot of people are kind of upset, and I really do agree with the community about how I think nerfs should be less often than they kind of have been. However, Massive kind of does this things in a weird order. They do something and then it doesn't make sense until down the road. And a lot of people kind of just get super upset because they see what's happening in front of them rather than what's coming down the road. But I think that the nerf on the G36 was needed. I just feel like they should have given a little bit more information on why it's going to be needed down the road. I think it was either Breezy or Arekkz said that they it seems like they haven't been as transparent as they used to be lately. And yeah.
Well, one thing that hasn't been nerfed yet is Tacticians, and we have Mr. Tactician with us today. So, MarcoStyle, first of all, we can blame you for this current mess, and secondly, do you think that Massive have been doing their job when it comes to balancing that build specifically, and given how potent it is? I've heard the comment a lot from people like, "Oh my God, they nerfed the G36 and my Sentry and my Striker, and yet Tacticians is untouched. What's the deal with that?" So, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. I've been enjoying my my Temptation build, if that's what you're asking.
I bet you have. I bet you have.
I don't know what you're all talking about. I don't see an issue here.
Game seems perfectly balanced to Marco-style.
Yeah, no, G36 nerf it even more, in my opinion. That's no, but just to get back to the topic of Massive not being transparent enough, I think honestly they're trying everything that they have to be as transparent as possible. I just do not think they have the resources to, fix all the things in this game and, put all the information forward. I think this you can see this back in a lot of things. Like, for example, the bug where, I don't know if you had this too, but every time I pick up a sealed cache in the Dark Zone, it doesn't show up in my DZ thing.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, stuff with the first aid, stuff with the smart cover, all those things. I'm pretty sure that those bugs would have been caught if they just play tested the game for more than 2 hours in the Dark Zone. If they play test, if they put the patch, so to speak, live on their consoles and then play tested it, and then they would have picked up 1 or 2 sealed caches, I'm pretty sure they would have noticed that something was wrong. And I feel like the lack that those things are still coming true. I feel like that's just one example of how they simply. I don't think they have the resources to do any more at this point. I don't know how big of a studio they are. I don't know how much money or how much people they're putting on these things, but I don't think it's enough. I think that's the reason why we see all these things come true, and I also think that's the reason for the stealth nerf. Everybody's like saying Massive is just trying to hide it away because they don't want bad publicity that they hit it. I just think it was simply overlooked, and it was simply not. They don't have the resources.
I agree. Yeah, these ideas that Massive lies is just so crazy.
There would be no reason for them to do so.
As if we are not going to find out that they change our guns. Like, we can data mine the information.
Yeah.
The suggestion that Massive is ever lying to you at any point is ridiculous. It's purely because, and I agree with Marco on this, like, they're new to this. There's literally 5 studios working on this game, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and they're like trying to figure this out as they go. And so I reckon everything can be explained away by the fact that, like, they're just learning as they're doing. And it's not okay though. Like, and I guess I also need to say simultaneously that, like, we should have higher expectations when it comes to quality at this point. This is a AAA game.
Oh, I'm not saying it's an excuse.
Oh,
I'm just saying that.
I know you're not. I'm saying I agree with what you're saying, but I'm simultaneously saying that I think it is okay for us to have better expectations around quality control. And I think the breakneck pace of updates for this game is hurting it more than anything else.
Yes.
Again, I don't need new content. I'm fine with the content that's there. Just make it work really well and balance it,
Yes.
And that's all I really care about at this point. So, and I think that this studio is just being pushed to breaking point to churn out new content, to meet contractual agreements perhaps with Microsoft around DLC and whatever else, or to get out ahead of new expansions from Destiny and Battlefield 1. They need to get it out. Whereas really they just need to stop, and they need to just fix everything, and they need to make it balanced, because it's not okay at this point. It's unquestionably not a standard that we should expect as consumers. You know what I mean? Like, that's a fact. And I'm not, I don't like dumping on Massive. That's just that's obviously.
Well, I think definitely like frequency is a super important thing to bear in mind, right? Because as you say, like, because it's so fast. You look at any other game. Like, most of these updates. Destiny. You get an update every 3-6 months, maybe something like that, and and it'll be a big expansion after that. The fact that it's like release 1 month. We've had back-to-back updates. So to a certain extent as well, even with nerfs, the reason people are feeling it more as well is because they're feeling them so fast. Like, something comes out and it's not long before the next update, so it's not long before everything changes. If someone's working, they don't have the time, like us, to play like as much as we do, then it might take them 2-3 weeks to complete a gear set. By the time they've done that, if then a new stuff comes out and then everything's changed and nerfed, then they're like, well, hold on a minute, I spent all my time doing this. So yeah, I agree that I think maybe they should just do. That's why I've got slightly higher hopes for survival, because the next update, it's a slightly bigger gap. You've got 2 months effectively, so hopefully that additional time gives them time to test it better, to maybe like put more stuff in it or think about it greater. But I would much rather wait 3 or 4 months between updates and have them be super solid.
Yes, agreed.
But yeah, it's.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's literally crippling some people's experiences as well. It's not just like, oh, my I sometimes can't see a sealed cache. Sometimes it's like my map doesn't open, or reclaimer means, because Breezy, you were just saying were you saying that you haven't been going to the Dark Zone because of the reclaimer bug?
Oh yeah, I love PvP in this game, but aside from the problems that it already had, I mean, Reclaimer just made things like now I have to deal with shock turrets, sticky bombs, and being lit on fire 24/7. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so those sorts of things are not tiny issues, and they really do affect the overall sort of balance of the game. And I think that, yeah, I mean, obviously we want to see it fixed, and hopefully Massive prioritize that, because it's a big deal. But look, one thing that's landed pretty well, though, broadly speaking, is the incursion, and I kind of want to talk about that because it's a fairly different design, I think, versus the last incursion, you know, like, or the other two incursions, I should say. So I'm just interested to hear what you guys are thinking. So maybe Drew, or LikeButter, sorry man, I always call you by your first name.
No problem.
What are your thoughts on that, on the new incursion? Did you enjoy it? Like, is it balanced? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually really like the new incursion. I think it's by far the best one. One of the problems with the first two incursions was that it felt like you were kind of just killing, you know, wave after wave in a similar area, especially Falcon Loss, just wave after wave staying in the same spot, especially because that's, you know, half the way people do it now is just using a similar strategy where they just kind of hold down a certain part of the map. And I think with is it Dragon's Nest? I think that's what it's called. It's nice to be able to have one area where you have to do a certain thing, and then you move on to a new area, and you got new enemies and new things to do. And I think that they need to definitely keep that type of structure when it comes to doing the incursions. I think it's way better to have multiple levels and multiple things that you need to do during the incursion rather than it just being wave after wave in one room.
Yeah. Has anyone here finished on Heroic, by the way? I didn't get a chance to play it last night, and obviously we're doing this tonight. Has anyone finished on Heroic yet?
No, I'm going to do it on the stream.
Okay.
I didn't even bother.
Oh, you did it, Breezy?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did? How'd you find it in terms of the balance? Does it feel good? Does it feel crazy? Is it just like, oh my god, fire? What do you think?
It's very, very easy. If you have a smart cover and an immunity, you're good.
Okay, sure, fair enough. Yeah, that's it. Smart cover. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that topic now.
Oh God, don't get me started, please.
Okay, so fair enough. So that's the incursion, and it's generally a pretty good news story there, and I think it's a more interesting and intricate design than they brought in the past. What hasn't changed much though is the Dark Zone. It's very much stagnant, and I really want to spend a good chunk of time talking about where that is right now, and in terms of how it feels to be in the Dark Zone, what the major problems are, and what really needs to change. Because I think we've been talking a long time about why the Dark Zone sucks, and I think maybe we in this conversation now could have a think about, well, actually, how does it need to be better? So Drew, you obviously spent a lot of time in the Dark Zone.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what PvP is like right now and where it needs to be in future?
So where PvP is right now is a little bit better than it was in 1.2, minus the whole reclaimer bug thing, because obviously we're getting a little bit stronger with being able to recalibrate one of our weapon talents and having 229 weapons. So we're getting a little bit stronger while the armor cap stays at 75%, but you're still, like, sometimes we still get those fights where people are just running around in circles and they're running in and out of triage, and there's sticky bombs going off, and there's people wall bouncing off of cover to get the stats, and it's really hectic. And I really feel like they need to add some sort of armor penetration in the game. I've been saying this since the game came out, like, to have armor be such a prominent stat on everything in the game. There's not one piece of gear that you can get that doesn't have a base armor stat. And I think one of the biggest problems is if you have something that is so prominent on gear and there's no counter to that, what you get people that don't necessarily put as much into stamina. They just have to get that armor cap, and then obviously they run a sticky bomb build, or they run like a tactician build or something like that, and there's really no negative to having a little bit lower health, because there is nothing that shreds through that armor. Where if, like, in a game like League of Legends or anything else, any other game out there that has armor penetration, if you have high armor and low health, you're going to be screwed, because if you start getting shredded by somebody who has armor penetration, you're going to feel that. So I definitely think that Tanktician needs to be dealt with. I think triage is probably one of the biggest problems with that. Being able to shoot a sticky bomb every 5 to 6 seconds because you have a team running in and out of a heal, I think is
that
just ridiculous.
That has nothing to do with a tactician, though, does it? Because you can shoot if you're mentioning triage, Like the whole reason why Tactician is so powerful is because you have those powerful heals and powerful stickies, but if you're Sentry, you can do the
But
same
you're
thing.
getting the sticky off cooldown so fast. And
yeah,
people
but
who
then
aren't
you would
using
have,
a sticky
that is
bomb.
because triage is bugged, right? I don't think that has much to do with the Tacticians themselves. Like, I think there's a lot of the underlying problems come with that triage procs in so many ways. You can even proc triage if you prop a medkit with the healing over time, and you could get any skill back in like 2 seconds. And the same goes for consumables. I don't know if you noticed, but triage also procs for consumables. So let's say you have fire bullets active, you usually have to wait for the cooldown. You pop a medkit and you can instantly use fire bullets again. It's just bugged at this point. That's why.
So does Caduceus, which is really nice.
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it? Someone messaged me about that.
I think
Caduceus
that
as well.
I wouldn't mind tanks as much if there was armor penetration. That's the problem. Like, I think when you
I
just
agree.
get too tanky, there's just nothing you can do. It's like I'm shooting an NPC, but they're running around and someone's controlling it. Like, it's literally what it feels like. So
There needs to be, like, the game needs to revolve around like a rock paper scissors kind of thing, right? Like every game that, you know, like an RPG that has those kind of mechanics, that has tank, that has DPS, you can always have a counter like in some kind of sensible circle, right? And this is missing that obvious counter. You know, damage is great, fine, tank is great, but there's no. Yeah, I agree. There's no counter. For it.
Maybe
It
there
needs to
should
happen
be a
because-
stat extra damage based on the enemy's percentage of health. So let's say for every every bullet that you hit does an extra 1% damage of the enemy's max health. So people that spec a lot into stamina will feel the pain a lot more than people that don't spec a lot into stamina. So you could be the tank shredder of the team, so to speak.
Yep.
Something
You know
like
what
that.
that sounds like
that's a
to
really
me?
good idea. Blade of
That
the
sounds
Rogue
like
King.
a great gear set. That's practical.
Yeah.
Whoa,
hey,
slow down.
hey,
Slow
massive,
down there,
massive. Are
Breezy.
you
Well, that's
listening?
also that would also come with proper sort of like redesign of the signature skills to a certain extent. Like I feel like that's where like signature skills come in quite nicely. If like Survival Link was more geared to people that go DPS, have low health, so they use it to try and like bridge that gap. But you then if you come up against a tank and you're supposed to use, like, imagine if what's it called, Tactical Link actually gave you armor penetration on your bullets, so you actively use that as a means to penetrate armor like properly.
Right.
Then you'd have like you'd be using signature skills as like a rock paper scissors mechanic. You're like, all right, crap, we've got our tank. You know, let's deal with this. Let's let's switch to this, and then we'll burn through it. And then you have a sensible means to do it, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So there's 2 things I want to touch on before we finish up. Just in relation to the Dark Zone, every now and then you get a post that makes it to the top of Reddit that's like, the Dark Zone experiment has failed, massive. It's time to throw in the towel. It's never going to work. I'm interested to hear if anyone has views on that. Like, so Breezy, for instance, do you think that they could ever get to the Dark Zone 2, a position where it's actually functional in the way that it's intending to be, in terms of the mix of PvE and PvP, and obviously we've got all these PvE gear sets and all this PvE power translating into this imbalanced PvP environment. Do you think they could ever get it to the point where it's actually working, or do you think it kind of needs to be torn up and we need to start all over?
I think the Dark Zone is never going to be balanced. If they want people to have fun while PvPing, I think they need to severely nerf the mobs, bring it back to the days where we pretty much ignored them and only killed them when they were in the way, and then went back to PvPing. Because honestly, this is our only form of PvP. What I would like to see is an additional arena, and not necessarily get rid of the Dark Zone. People who want a Dark Zone in there would be fine, right? I see the Dark Zone is sort of kind of like Battlefield, right? Only with a very small pool of players, and half of which don't even want to participate in PvP, right? If there was like 64 players in there, then it might be a little more fun. The mobs weren't super annoying, but if they don't want it to be like, if they don't want it to be like that, I mean, give us a separate PvP like only thing, right? And yeah.
Drew, do you have
Royale.
Drew, do you have a vision for what the Dark Zone needs to be? What's the perfect end state for the Dark Zone for you?
It's really difficult, and I think it'd be hard to go over all of the issues, but one of the main problems, I think, is that the Dark Zone is extremely small if you think about it, and it kind of doesn't really ever feel like there is a lot to do when it comes to, do you want to go up to DZ06? Do you want to go to DZ05? I think they need to expand the Dark Zone and make the server numbers a lot higher. And I think they need to start gearing, whether it be gear sets or stats or anything like that, more towards PvP situations rather than PvE. And I honestly think that if they expand the Dark Zone and they make small changes and add in like more I guess like hourly, like, you know how like it's got the supply drops, like hourly events, I guess. And I think if they added more hourly events and more things for people to do, that it would be a really good experience if they somehow found a way to balance it. But I kind of agree with Breezy. I personally think there should be a separate like game mode or game type or something where you can maybe, I don't know, like I think you mentioned Battle Royale. I think Battle Royale in this game would be phenomenal. If you think about it, like the storm kind of pushes you into like to a part of the map and then you have to fight it out. I think that would be amazing. But
and imagine if you started without equipment, like you got pushed in, and suddenly like you're stripped of your equipment, and you have to scavenge for it, and suddenly it's like whoever's left suddenly gets like a massive supply drop with like crap tons of 268 gear or something. That'd be like that'd be sick.
I would play that all day.
You know one of the things that they could exactly. Like I play loads of Battle Royale in like other games, but one thing they could have done, obviously this would be a Division 2 kind of thing, but if you look at like the World of Warcraft framework, you actually have, because like Butter mentioned, obviously the Dark Zone's a little bit too small. So imagine if you had, when you create your character, you choose if you want to play on a PvE or a PvP server. So like in World of Warcraft, if you play on a PvP server and you see Alliance, you see like the enemy faction, they can kill you while you're killing that boar to go and get that piece of that quest piece, right? And obviously it's a dangerous thing, but people go into it knowing, all right, I've agreed to go into a PvP server. So imagine if you did that, and then suddenly the whole of the Manhattan map, there was no Dark Zone. It's just everywhere you go. Whether you're in the starting place in like Hudson, whatever it's called, or whether you're like top right hand corner of the map. If you see another agent and you're roaming around, they'll be like, that guy could mess me up right now. And like that would be cool, because then you wouldn't necessarily have this debate of like, it's really annoying because I'm just trying to gear up and I'm just trying to have fun and play with people, and people are like killing me, because then the people that want a Dark Zone and PvP will be on the PvP server, so you won't really get that anger when someone tries to kills you.
I think that's a really awesome suggestion. I think kind of segues into the last thing I want to talk about today, which is around the experience of the casual/solo player. So when I say casual, I don't mean like low skill. I mean someone that doesn't have tons of hours to play this game, right? That's a really important distinction. And solo players are those that generally prefer to either play on their own or to matchmake because they don't have anyone else to play with. And a lot of people are in that position now because a lot of their mates have quit and they don't play anymore. So what is it? Is it, like, my question is, and maybe Marco, you can kick us off on this. Like, is it actually possible to play the Division as a casual/solo player right now and meaningfully progress your character, or is that out of the question?
That is completely out of the question. There's no doubt about it. The Dark Zone is so brutal that you can't play alone. I cannot clear 2 landmarks on my own without having to restock already, or without me having to kind of meet a group of 4 players that will most likely mess me up if I'm by myself. I mean, I've got 700k toughness. I can run around, run away from people forever, basically not die, right? But the NPCs, they still 2-shot me. So if there's no one to revive me, no one to buff me, no one to back me up.
Just to be clear, I'm going to interrupt you. Are you saying with 700k toughness, you are still getting 2-shot by enemies? Like, actually, or is that
that's actually true. If I go to DZ06, the pit, I cannot clear that by myself. It's maybe I'm just not good enough. Or like, I could do it with smart cover and heals, and it will take me 10, 15 minutes to do. That's maybe exaggerated, maybe 5-10 minutes. But then all my ammo will be gone. I gotta go back restocking, and I got 1 yellow item. Now, if I go to do that for like all the landmarks, and then I imagine I got like 6 yellow items, I go and extract, hey, 4 rogues come around, GG, 3 hours played for nothing. Maybe, I'm exaggerating maybe a little bit, but that's the situation that people are in now. And most people don't have 700k toughness. They're running around with 400k toughness. Yeah, they're doing a little more damage, so maybe they'll be able to clear the landmarks a bit faster than I can. But it's just, I don't think it's doable. And then the incursions, you need 4 players, obviously, and those players need to be decent, so matchmaking usually doesn't work. Underground, I guess it's possible for solo players, but then you got the shit gear that we already talked about. So, I think it's out of the question. Solo players are pretty much screwed right now.
So Breezy, have you got any? So one question that we got from Twitter was like, can you give me some advice as a solo player on what I could do? Breezy, is there any advice you could give a solo or casual player, or is it like Marco said, there's just no hope for you at the moment? You kind of just need to wait for Massive to change the game.
It's exactly like Marco said. The only thing that you can do as a solo player requires tacticians or 50k skill power. You can solo clear underground, like phases and stuff like that. You can get yourself to 68s, but it requires like an extremely glassy set with tacticians. So you'd be hitting high numbers of damage. You have absolutely no toughness, so you'd have to rely on just not getting hit, and you'd have to have that maxed out smart cover. And that requires a very competent player because you're playing so glassy, right? You're doing damage. And you're right. You're having that skill power for the smart cover. It's just not practical for
that's
the
another
average
thing. Like
casual solo
I can
player.
like if you mess up in a team, cool. They can revive you. No problem. If you mess up the underground by yourself, that's it. It's over. Gone. No revive. No second chance.
Yeah. I think one thing that's
Intel
worth
lost
mentioning,
if you use directives as well.
Yeah, but I think it's worth mentioning. I mean, it's not. It depends on the tier you want to talk about. Like, I wouldn't say it's completely lost for solo players, because I put up a video on like how you can gear up like solo using. You can use the underground and you can gear up. Like if you are, as you mentioned, like you're a casual player, you don't have too much time. You can play the underground and you play for cash instead. So I recommend you farm hard mode with directives. You can do it easily on your own. You don't have to have even like necessarily great gear. Gives you a good enough experience to rank up relatively quickly. You do that, and then yes, you're limited by the gear sets you can get. So if you're looking to be a solo player, super efficient, get the best gear, then yes, you are in a slightly difficult position, and you're somewhat screwed. But if you are like a person that, say, for example, has fallen out of Division for a bit, looking to get back into it, you're still trying to like at least get up to a higher gear score standard and be somewhat competitive, maybe not necessarily within the top percentage, but somewhat, then yeah, you can still play solo underground. So there are a couple of sources, and of course HVTs give you Lone Star stuff. But I think the ultimate underlying answer is that if you want to be able to do everything solo, then no, you can't. Like it's not an issue. But I mean, we kind of touched on that last time as well. We touched on the fact that not everything should cater to solo players, right? There are some activities that solo players can do, but unfortunately, this kind of game, the game that it is.
I feel like I could solo.
Right?
I could go solo into the Dark Zone in patch 1.1 and before that. And I feel like that has been taken away from us with the 1.2 and 1.3 patch because the mobs just got stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, you can't even run past them. Like I used to just run past them just to like get to, for example, supply drops. Like I used to just run past the mobs, get to supply drop, and job done. Now, I can't. Like I'll run a couple of steps, and I've used all my medkits by the time I get to the supply drop box because I've been shot in the back 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not doable.
So conscious of time now, and I think we might want to wrap this up. And the way I want to finish this is, obviously we've got between now and the next expansion, whenever that is, 1-2, let's say it's 2 months, roughly ballpark. What needs to happen between now and then? What's the one thing that you think you really want to see implemented in this game? And I'm going to limit you to one thing because obviously there's a litany of things we just discussed. But like, if you could only implement one fix to this game in the next little while before the next expansion went live, what is it? What's the division really needs? Arekkz, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Wait, one fix or one like ultimate dream feature?
Oh no, fix. I'm talking about fixes. Sorry, because we've talked about other ideas for what could be added, whatever. But what actually needs to be fixed or changed?
They need to fix the NPCs. Then they need to fix them. Like it's getting to the point now where it's like it is ridiculous. I mean, like whether they have to tone down their health, whether they need to give us some kind of better method. While weapons do have armor damage, whether they need to buff weapons or do something, right? But the NPCs need to be fixed in some capacity because like it's getting if every single expansion like increases the power cap, and that comes with another level of enemy that's like level 36 that's just even stronger and even spongier before, it's just going to get out of hand. It's going to get to the point where you will literally like the enemy will look at you and you will die, right? And it's like an exaggeration, but
it's going on right now. They can look at you and kill you right now. They can actually kill you before they aim at you. I don't know if you've seen such instances, but
I have seen that.
Even before the snipers drop down. Yeah, no, like as the snipers come up from cover, before they've even aimed you, you're already dead and respawning.
Yeah.
What about you, Marco? If you could fix or change one thing, what would it be?
Please fix the smart cover, the skills, man, the skills. I need the skills, the fundamental things to work properly. I cannot rely on my smart cover to actually go down when I press that button.
Okay, you're talking about buggy skills.
Yeah, like fix that shit.
Okay.
There's been so many times that I died because I'm not even talking about the first 8 delay, but then I double tap smart cover. I see my character animation pop the smart cover on the wall. I hear the cling sound that the smart cover is on, only to find out that smart cover has not been activated, and it just I rage when I see it.
Rip MarcoStyle.
I rage.
That's it. And Drew, how about you, buddy? One thing.
I have to just say armor penetration, man. Like, and I think they need to start focusing a little bit more on PvP. And I understand that a lot of people don't choose to PvP and to play the game that way. But I think if they fixed it, those people would give it a try and would give it a chance. And I just think that PvP needs to be fun, and it will encourage more people to do it and have a good time.
Cool. And Breezypeazy?
Those are all really good points. I'll say gear sets. Fix gear sets. Give us not like 2 or 3 viable ones, but like a plethora of viable gear sets. So there's actually, so when one drops, I'm not like, oh, this is garbage. It's just, oh, it's not this, but this is still an upgrade.
Yeah, totally agree. And for me personally, I've actually I'm not going to promo a video now in this slot, but I've already talked about what I feel are like the critical things that need to change, and that is like the amount of damage amplification that we get from skills and set bonuses
agreed.
and the like. They just really force the developers to up the health of the mobs by these massive amounts. And if you could nerf those things, then you could nerf the health of the mobs, and that means that solo players could actually have a chance. And that was that was the point I was trying to make on my 20-minute video, which is like the most disliked video that I've ever put out, because I think people just thought I was just calling. People just thought I was calling for nerfs, but really what I was calling for is to make the game a lot easier by basically removing the need for all this shit that jacks up the health pool of all the enemies, So again, it comes back to that point of balance, like with this game just needs to be balanced. It's the number one thing. It's not new content. It's not new features. It's like it's like getting the core game right, because we can add new stuff later on when the bones of it or the sort of like the rest of it work, So, but yeah, look, that's it for this one, guys. This is the 3rd podcast we've done now in cycle with all of the patch releases, and we'll definitely be doing a 1.4 when that drops, so you can certainly look forward to that one. But thank you to everyone that's come along. I know people get up nice and early for this, or I'm up a bit later and whatever else, but it's just great having so many voices in the conversation representing different perspectives. And obviously thank you to everyone for listening as well. I really hope that you found the conversation useful. And if you've got any questions, you can obviously find all these guys on their own channels and on Twitter and the like. And you can obviously leave comments below as well and ask any questions, and I'll try and get back to you as best I can. But thank you very much for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. Take good care, and we'll see all of you guys later. And everyone listening, thanks very much for your time as well. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye.